Welcome to the All Facts Matter podcast, where we push back against corporate media propaganda with facts, evidence, and data. I'm Peter, the author of All Facts Matter. Let's begin. While the new year is typically a time for new resolutions, new changes, and a generally optimistic looking forward into the future, we must not lose sight of the reality that the future is always built upon whatever exists in the past. Where we are is invariably a product of where we have been. Similarly, where the U.S. economy is the product of where the U.S. economy has been. Unfortunately for American manufacturing, in 2024, where the U.S. economy has been is nowhere good. For all of the hype and hoopla from the Biden-Harris administration about jobs creation and a manufacturing boom, American manufacturing did not prosper in 2024. And if prevailing trends in capacity utilization and employment are not reversed quickly, 2025 will also not be a kind year for American manufacturing. Now, with Donald Trump about to take office for a second time and about to set about implementing his Agenda 47, we should take a critically look at what the current data tells us about the state of the U.S. manufacturing sector and what challenges lie ahead for President Trump as he takes office on January 20th. So let's see what the data has to tell us. Now, the catalyst for this presentation has been the publication of the Institute for Supply Management's Purchasing Managers Index for manufacturing for December of 2024. And while the PMI did rise 0.9 points in December, it still remained very much in the contraction area. With the PMI numbers, any number that comes in below 50 means that the sector is contracting. 50 is the threshold between expansion and contraction. If the numbers are above 50, when the numbers are above 50, the sector is expanding. And when the numbers are below 50, the sector is contracting. And what the ISM PMI data for manufacturing shows is that the manufacturing sector in this country has been contracting literally all year long. There was only 1 month in the entire year, and that was March, where there was even a smidgen of expansion, and every other month has been printing contraction. The summer months were especially bad. And manufacturing production was no better. The manufacturing production PMI shows that there has been contraction since about June of the year. There was some expansion back during this early spring and into the early summer months, but from June onward, we've seen nothing but contraction. And again, below 50 contraction, above 50 expansion, and for the last 7 months, it's been below 50. And this is not the kind of data that is consistent with any kind of manufacturing boom. This is not the kind of data that's consistent with manufacturing doing well. So all of the hype and hoopla that you get from the Biden-Harris administration about manufacturing and investing in manufacturing and a manufacturing boom, this data is basically calling BS on that. This data is basically saying no. There is no manufacturing boom. There's a manufacturing recession. There's a manufacturing contraction going on. And inventories are not any better. If anything, inventories are worse. Because inventories show that, again, we've only had the 1 month, and this was August, where there was any kind of expansion, and not a lot of expansion at that. And every other month this year has been contraction. Again, so this is manufacturing and not building their inventories, anticipating future demand is going to be picking up, but shrinking their inventories, which is not an optimistic outlook on future demand. If your inventory is shrinking and you're letting your inventory shrink, that means you don't think you're going to be selling more later on. This is not an optimistic trend. And that's a challenge for President Trump, because we have to remember, one of his signature promises on Agenda 47 was he's going to stop outsourcing and he's going to turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Now, to be clear, I applaud this goal. This is the right goal. This is the right policy. And I very much want to see the United States revitalize the manufacturing side of the economy. I hope that Donald Trump is successful in this. But I also realize that this is not just something that you can just wave a magic wand. This is not just something that's going to just simply happen. Much of the heavy lifting is actually outside of the president's immediate purview. In order for there to be a revitalization of manufacturing, we have to see inventories go up. We have to see production go up. We have to see the PMIs expand. They have to move above 50. They have to move into the expansion territory. The overall PMI has to move into the expansion territory. And that's going to take an increase in capacity utilization. That's going to take an increase in employment. And these are things that the companies are going to have to decide to do. Now, there, of course, are, the president's role and the administration's role is going to be to create incentives to encourage companies to expand, encourage companies to build up output, increase employment, increase production. And a lot of these are the basic things that have already been talked about. There are tax incentives that Donald Trump and his proxies are mentioning and tossing around, incentives to get companies to move their manufacturing operations here to the United States. Tax abatements to encourage them to build factories here, and send similar types of maneuvers. We've all heard about Donald Trump's tariff threats to China, tariff threats to Canada, tariff threats to Mexico, tariff threats to other countries. And of course, by doing this, he makes domestic manufacture more attractive. At least that's the goal, that's the theory, that's the hope. More attractive. And then this will, of course, encourage expansion of production, expansion of employment, expansion of inventories, et cetera, and so forth. And part and parcel of that, of course, is something that Donald Trump had championed during his first term, which is, of course, utilizing government contracts to incentivize companies to do more domestic manufacture, domestic production, and of course, keeping in part and parcel with that is the whole notion of Buy American. Now, a lot of critics are saying that these policies aren't going to help, that they're going to result in a runaway deficit, that they're going to cause inflation, and there is a risk to that. As I've discussed with the tariff situation, especially, tariffs are going to be an upward pressure on prices, and the question is going to be, are there sufficient downward pressures on prices to equalize that so that inflation is not a result of that? Now, the reality has been in 2024 that consumer prices for goods have been decreasing, and import prices especially have been decreasing. And so arguably there is a window of opportunity for Donald Trump to apply some tariffs where inflation is not going to be the immediate result. And so there, he has some maneuvering room with that. Depending on how the tariffs are applied, or depending on the magnitude of the tariffs, they could be inflationary. I mean, there is a risk that is being taken here if he follows through on that. And of course, we've all, everyone has read and heard about how what other countries like Canada and China and Mexico are doing or contemplating about what are they going to do if Donald Trump does try to make good on his tariff threat. So these are definitely the things that he can do. Some of it is going to already have an impact because countries are already figuring out how they're going to respond to some of this, and whether it's stimulative to manufacturing. We're going to have to wait and see how 2025 unfolds on that. Will his policy proposals work? Ask me again next year. Now, we should also note that not all of the data is bad. Manufacturing prices have actually done rather well, particularly in the first part of the year, but even in the latter half of the year, we've basically seen the manufacturing prices in a broadly moving up. The manufacturing prices paid PMI has been in expansion territory for most of the year. There's only been a couple of months, September and November really, where there was any type of contraction taking place. Now, rising prices, an expanding price index is problematic from as regards to inflation, especially. It can be if the prices rise, if there's too much price rise, then you're going to be grappling with inflation, and that can drag down the economy. But at the same time, if the price index is showing expansion and prices are generally rising, particularly in real terms, this is an incentive for companies to produce more. And so this is an incentive for companies to expand their operations, expand employment, expand their capacity utilization, et cetera, and so forth. So there are some risks associated with it, but this is this is overall a good thing. And what's also encouraging is that in the last couple of months that we've seen a recovery in the new orders PMI. Now, new orders, of course, are essential for doing anything that's going to revitalize and grow the manufacturing sector, because you need to have that new order business in order to have expansion of any kind. So it had been doing well initially at the start of the year. It got weak during the summer, but the new orders are coming back, and so this is one of the optimistic outlook points that show that not all the data is bad. But there's a caveat here, and that caveat is that just with the prices rising, yes, these are good trends, but they were taking place even as the sector as a whole has been contracting. And that means that these expansionary influences are not enough to counter the other contractionary forces that the manufacturing sector has been running into. And so, yes, this is good, but we're going to have to see a lot more of it if it's going to contribute to reversing the trends with the overall PMI, with the overall sector, to get it from going from contraction to get it back into going into an expansionary phase. And so there are bright spots, but it's going to take a lot more than just a couple of bright spots for manufacturing to get back into a healthy state. Now, one of the challenges that Donald Trump is going to be facing is that 2024 was a bad year, but it was not an unusual year. Capacity utilization, as we can see, has been in decline since late 2022. For other manufacturing, it's been about October 2022. It's been in decline since right at the end of 2022 for durable goods manufacturing, and for non-durable goods, it's actually started declining way back in March or April of 2022. But the general trend has been down. Other manufacturing trend is the capital utilization has been down. Every portion of the manufacturing economy, durable goods, non-durable goods, and other, capacity utilization is lower now than it was at the start of 2024. And that's not a positive trend. Now, while we've been seeing a multi-year decline under the Biden-Harris administration, that wasn't always the case. There was actually some growth taking place in capacity utilization during Trump's first term of office, particularly in the early years. For some of it, it began to taper off, and there was actually a trend reversal for durable goods manufacturing in 2019. But broadly, there was an overall tendency for there to be expansion and growth in these areas. That's not been the case in the last few years with the Biden-Harris administration. Pretty much after about October 2022, we've been seeing a decline in capacity utilization across the board. Yeah, and one of the things that this reminds us is that not all of these troubles started. These things have gotten worse under the Biden-Harris administration, but they didn't start there. We do see in October 2022, we do see this trend reversal going in industrial production, going from recovery back into decline. But we also have to remember that that decline, aside from the cratering of everything during the pandemic panic of 2020, that decline actually started in 2019. From 2019 onward is when we're seeing a downward trend in industrial production, and this is pre-COVID. This is during the Trump's first administration. Was this a consequence of Trump's first round of tariffs back in 2018? We don't have enough data to make that correlation, but it certainly is a possibility. And this is one of the tariff risks that Donald Trump is going to have to contend with. But the weakness very much is something that predates the Biden-Harris administration. That the production declines really started during the Trump's first term of office, and we should not forget that. The Biden-Harris regime has not done anything to improve the situation, but we really can't say that they caused the situation. Yeah. Now, when we zoom in on the Biden-Harris administration, we see very clearly that there is a clear inflection point here in 2022. Prior to October 2022, the industrial production index is going up, meaning that the production is increasing. After September and October 2022, everything started trending down. Production started falling off. Production started decreasing. So we have a very clear inflection point right here in October 2022, and this is a sign of things. This was the turn that got taken for the worse, right here. This is where manufacturing has started going into a long-term decline again. Yeah. But again, we have to realize a lot of that decline is merely some of that decline. There were declines in manufacturing production, going all the way back into Trump's early term. Other manufacturing was declining pretty much since the early Trump years, back in 2017. And while there was a crash and a recovery during the pandemic panic, that decline has really pretty much continued more or less on the same trend from Trump's first term of office to today. Not quite the same thing with durable goods and non-durable goods. There has been, there was a little more growth in durable goods, but even by 2019, there was some, that was starting to decline. And while there's been recovery since the COVID pandemic panic, again we see this October 2022 inflection point, and a downward trend ever, from that point forward. So we're definitely seeing a longer period of decline under the Biden-Harris administration. But we did see decline of these metrics during Trump's first term of office, and these are the metrics that have to get turned around. If the United States is to become a superpower, these are the metrics that have to get turned around. We have to see the capacity utilization moving up, not down. We have to see industrial production expanding, which means it has to be getting larger, not contracting, getting smaller, which is what it's been doing. We have to see, an increase in inventories. We have to see an increase in production. We have to see an increase in output. These are the metrics that need to be reversed if Donald Trump is going to make good on his promise to make the U.S. a manufacturing superpower. Now, where the weakness and decline in the manufacturing sector really hurts, where the pain point really exists, is in jobs, because the decline in the manufacturing sector has produced job loss, and provably has produced job loss. When we look at the metrics for the employment in manufacturing, we see that after about October 2022, again, we see this inflection point again. After October 2022, the manufacturing job growth basically stopped. It either stopped or was declining. And if we zero in on that date and index the payroll, all employees, total across all, the entire economy, and all employees from manufacturing to October 2022, we see that there is literally no growth in manufacturing employment from October 2022 onward. It just stopped, almost literally. And in recent months, it's actually been declining. Yeah, and this is not a synthetic number. This is not a made up thing. This is basically saying that employment growth ended in October 2022. Yeah, and in part because of this, the problems with overall employment. Manufacturing wages, like wages throughout the economy, have not kept pace with inflation. And so, that while nominal wages have been going up, if we adjust for inflation, we find that in fact real wages are lower today than they were at the start of the Biden-Harris administration. And that's true across the board. And even though with manufacturing wages, there's been some catching up in recent months where the gap between wages and inflation has narrowed somewhat, it has not overcome it. We've not seen the wages catch up to and move past inflation like we saw, in the immediate aftermath of the pandemic panic. Instead, we're seeing it, lagging behind inflation, such that people are basically earning less in real terms than they were just a few years ago. And compounding the problem with wages is the decline in hours worked. And this is really the triple whammy that we're seeing in manufacturing. We're seeing fewer jobs, reduced real wages, but reduced hours as well. During Trump's first term of office, manufacturing workers were spending about 41 hours on the job. That has since declined to just under 40 hours on the job. And this is for a broad statistical average across the entire workforce. And so that hour of variance is quite a lot. It's more than you would normally see. And this is an indication of just how ailing manufacturing is. That people are not there. The overtime hours aren't there. The extra hours aren't there. And keep in mind, a lot of especially for manufacturing jobs that pay hourly, if the number of hours is being reduced, then so is the paycheck. So this decline in hours is hitting workers right square in the wallet, and that of course is reducing their capacity to spend, reducing their capacity to invest in things, and it means they're having less money. When you get paid hourly, you need to be making you need to be working a goodly number of hours in order to have a decent sized paycheck. Yeah, and that's why, and I'm going to beat this dead horse again, I call this a jobs recession. That's why 2024 was a jobs recession, and really longer than 2024, because we know from that inflection point in October 2022 that this jobs recession really began in October of 2022, and it's been going on ever since. That's where we know that's the inflection point. That's when the employment growth in manufacturing stopped. That's when industrial production started to decline. That's when capacity utilization started to decline. And that's the nature of this recession, is that we're seeing a contraction. We're seeing a contraction in employment. We're seeing a contraction in production. We're seeing a contraction in capacity utilization. As basically there's just less work to be done, and because of that, the sector's taking it on the chin. Yeah, and these are the things that need to get changed. Now, one of the other obstacles that is going to be in Donald Trump's path, as we've learned with this whole nonsense over the H-1B visas, is going to be people like Elon Musk. As it came out that Elon Musk is a big fan of the H-1B visa program because Tesla uses quite a lot of them. Now, I've already discussed the problems with the H-1B visa program as respect to the American worker. But what we have to realize is that at the same time that Elon and others are utilizing the H-1B visa program to bring workers into this country, this is also the same time period where we're not seeing a growth in manufacturing employment in this country. So by definition, if manufacturing employment is not growing and you're bringing in more workers, by definition, those new workers are displacing the existing workers. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's really happening. That's what that's what's actually being done, and it's people like Elon Musk who are actually doing it. And this, of course, is a challenge because there is documentation to show that really strongly suggests that Elon Musk is laying off American workers and importing new workers on an H-1B visa, ostensibly to control costs and keep labor costs down. But while this has been happening, manufacturing employment has not been growing. So if manufacturing employment is not growing and you're bringing more workers in, then obviously you're adding to unemployment, you're adding to people not in the labor force, you're creating more imbalances in terms of your labor force, and of course by pushing up the supply of workers, you're greatly reducing the what the market wage is going to be. So it literally is taking money out of people's pocketbooks. And that's not to say that Elon is completely responsible for the decline of American manufacturing. He's not. And that's not to say that that he's responsible for the decline in hours worked. He's not, or any of that. But it's also to say that he's not helping. He's not creating manufacturing jobs, clearly. He's certainly not creating a lot of them. He's not improving, manufacturing employment overall, manufacturing wages overall. And it's like they'll say, well, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Well, when it comes to manufacturing employment, Elon Musk has not been part of the solution, and that makes him part of the problem. And the tech bros and other people, in those industries, are also part of the problem. This is not all on Elon, but this is going to be one of the political challenges that Donald Trump is going to have to deal with, because there's a component of his support base that's really and truly not all that supportive of trying to increase manufacturing in this country, trying to make U.S. into a manufacturing superpower. Now, to be clear, Donald Trump is the one who's going to be inaugurated on January the 20th. He's the one who was elected president. He's the one whose Agenda 47 it is. He's the one who made the pledge to turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Donald Trump is the president, not Elon Musk. But Elon Musk is someone who has worked his way into Trump's inner circle and is now one of his closest advisors. And so the question is going to be, what kind of advice is he going to give, Donald Trump? What kind of advice is he going to give, in terms of improving manufacturing? Is he going to be giving good advice? Donald Trump's going to need good counsel, good advice, good input from everybody around him if he's going to make good on these pledges. And with at least Elon Musk, we have someone who's going to be giving Donald Trump a lot of advice, but his track record suggests he might not be giving great advice. And this is something that people are going to have to stay on top of, and not be afraid to call BS on it, and bring pressure to bear via by putting issues on blast as need be, to make sure that the new administration makes good on each and every promise in Agenda 47, and in particular in turning America into a manufacturing superpower. And the one thing we can be certain of from looking at all the current state of American manufacturing, Donald Trump's got his work cut out for him. He's got a big challenge ahead, and it's going to take a lot of work to make it happen.
And that concludes this presentation. I hope you found this podcast helpful and informative. Please like it and share this with your friends. Word of mouth is how I publicize my work. Please also consider making a one-time donation or becoming a paid subscriber to All Facts Matter. Your support is what keeps this work going, and I greatly appreciate all of my subscribers. Without you, this work would have no meaning. I encourage everyone to be especially generous with feedback. Leave a word or two in the comment section so that we can keep the discussion going and that we may learn from each other. Thank you all for listening, and have a nice day.